Hey, my name's Rob and I'm 1/3 of Afterburner Studios alongside two of my closest friends, Paul and Ian. We're building Dreamscaper. Thank you for joining us. This is our second devlog diary. Our first one was in glorious 4:3 aspect ratio. This time, we're in magical 16:9. So luckily the reception from the last video was positive despite the low fidelity, which means I'm just gonna keep leaning into cheaper and less time-intensive solutions like this, which is great. So thank you to everyone who's been watching these videos. Today we've got a crazy amount of content to share with you. And to get it all down, I've had to create a giant list here on the second monitor. So I'm gonna have to be reading here and then looking at the camera, but it's impossible for me to just like remember what it says and then just regurgitate it in front of the camera. So to get things started, we've added a story introduction to the game. So when you boot up the game, the first time you play, before you were just like thrown into the tutorial and then thrown into a dream. Now there's going to be a little bit of a prologue, not like the prologue we have in our demo, but a prologue to the story that kind of explains what Cassidy has been through and will set the tone for the rest of the game. And the way that we plan on having our story told throughout early access is almost in episodic content where every month or so, I don't commit me to every month, but every time we do a content update, we'll have another story sequence that we'll embed within one of the dreams or after one of the dreams, and it'll tell more of the story of Cassidy, and not just the stories that you're experiencing between the relationships, but the story of Cassidy's entire arc and kind of what they've been through and where they're going. So hopefully you enjoy that. A lot of effort was put into it. It's also going to be teasing one of the bosses. It's going to be teasing one of the biomes. It was quite a bit of work to get the three of us all mobilized to get that intro in. So I'm super excited about that. But that's only one of a list of 30 things here. So in addition to that, Paul Svoboda got in the park, which is another Waking World location. It's beautiful, luscious green trees and grass. It was actually inspired by when he visited London. So it's like based on an actual park there that you can get shawarma at. And yeah, it looks beautiful. I'm really excited to start putting other characters in there and adding more gameplay to the Waking World, which we'll continue to iterate on throughout early access. The other part of environments that's been done is Paul has gone and added a whole bunch of different apartment states so that when you beat a boss and you go to the next dream, you're actually going to see your apartment changing alongside the story. And that's going to be paired with the story sequences that we'll eventually be adding to the game. But it allows you to kind of have a visual idea of how far along you are in the game by just looking at your apartment, which I think a lot of people will find exciting, visually exciting. Another super important feature that we should have added a long time ago was the ability to see all of your character stats all at one place. So it's kind of hard right now where you've got all these modifiers. You go burn damage or fire damage and freeze chance and like all these things, and you go, well, what does my actual character like look like right now, and is it worth me picking up this item to synergize with all the other stuff? And now it'll be a lot easier. There's just a panel that's been added, the inventory's been widened, and you can see at any point just how everything is stacking on top of each other, and it will allow you to make more tactical decisions when it comes to building your loadout. So super excited about that. Also helped me find a lot of bugs. So note to self for future games, always have a character stats screen from the very beginning. We've also added Fernando, one of the new Waking World characters that we're excited for you to get to know, that Kathy's written for. It's going to be a really interesting character. Really a highly requested feature as well. Everyone wanted starting loadouts, or most people wanted starting loadouts. Some people really didn't want them. So this is going to be a completely optional feature for those who want to have starting loadouts. But we've taken it kind of a step further, and we've plugged it into the crafting system. So at any point before a run begins, you're able to go, okay, I want to have the broadsword, and I want to have a legendary broadsword. So it requires a certain number of resources, and quickly throughout the run, you'll find that your starting loadout will become obsolete as you find higher level gear. So it doesn't break the balance, but it's a really fun and easy way to kind of get practice in with certain items or certain abilities that you're just like, okay, the RNG isn't helping me out here. I just really want to check out this new ability. So you can start piping in your crafting resources and get to experience those things. So Hope you like that. Of course, if you have feedback on that, we'll be able to iterate and continue to improve on that system. The second puzzle that I teased during the last devlog diary has been added. I don't want to give away any more hints than what I've already given, but it is my favorite puzzle. I think it's better than the pipe puzzle, personally, and so I'm really excited for people to get their hands on it. Oh, we've also added we've kind of fleshed out our element system, and we've added lightning, and so a bunch of different abilities have been added, and you can find weapons that do shock damage. And what's unique about lightning is a lot of the time it comes with a status effect like shock, which does chain lightning damage, which you'll see in a lot of action RPGs. And Ian did an amazing job with the visual treatment of how the VFX kind of arcs from one enemy to another, and it can chain a couple of times, and you can find modifiers on other items and keepsakes that increases the number of chains, and you get these really cool synergies that occur with this specific lightning kind of umbrella of items and modifiers. So definitely excited for that one to be in. We kind of wanted that from the very beginning, we just didn't have time. And speaking of modifiers, we've added, honestly, I feel like because of the pandemic and the lockdown, we've been able to add a whole bunch of stuff to the game because we've been so bored sitting alone doing nothing. So we're able to finally get in a whole bunch of modifiers that impact how projectiles behave, and these are all allowed to be stacked in different ways. So we've got a multiplier, which changes, like, instead of just shooting maybe one arrow, it shoots 2 arrows or 3 arrows. We've got homing modifiers, and keepsakes, which will make it so that when you fire an arrow or even a finger gun, it can kind of loop around and strike an enemy that's kind of trying to dodge it at the time. We've got ricochet, which when you hit an enemy, it will ricochet off that enemy a certain number of times. And then penetrating, which will blast through an enemy and come out the other side and potentially hit another enemy. So all of those things, like I said, can be stacked and create these really cool synergies. And obviously, I've mentioned this before, I'm a huge Binding of Isaac fan. I think this is kind of the first time we've had kind of those stackable synergies that are on the level of Binding of Isaac, where you've got your bullets that are able to do all these crazy things, and then they stack in interesting ways. And so I'm super excited that these 4 are now in, because our ranged weapons are now going to be just so much more interesting and so much more exciting, because there's so many more dynamic elements at play. Another thing we've added is we've wanted to have critical hits from the very beginning. We finally found time to do them, and if you're not familiar with what critical hits are, they're just kind of a risk-reward mechanic where you can choose an item that maybe has lower DPS but a higher critical chance, and then you're just kind of at the whim of the RNG, and sometimes you get super lucky and just take enemies down super quickly if you get a whole bunch of critical hits at the same time. And we have those as modifiers as well. So they're going to be able to make certain weapons have that kind of risk-reward dynamic. One big change we made was slow. We had the slow status effect, which was fine. It was cool on its own, but we saw an opportunity to kind of split that out and make it more interesting and varied. And so what we've done is slowed has become 2 different modifiers that are a little bit different. You've got wet and you've got oiled. And both of them slow down the enemy, so they're functionally the same thing as what slow was, but we've added this additional layer called critical extinguishes, which is if you combine and layer certain status effects on top of each other, you will cause a critical hit to occur without having to roll. Like it will occur. So a good example is if you oil the enemy, if you get them all oiled up, and then you use a burning attack on that enemy, the oil will get burned up, so they'll stop being slow, but you'll get a critical extinguish from that. And so you get an interesting kind of juggling of abilities and attacks to create these massive amounts of damage that you can deal. So excited to see how that works out. It's a little bit experimental. So like all of these things, it's early access this summer. So expect all of this to evolve if you're like, hey, this doesn't feel right. This feels weird. But I think it's going to be good still. Similar to how we've added modifiers for critical hits, we've also added modifiers for the bonus windows. And by that I mean, when the character flashes white, and if you attack at the right time, or if you release your ranged weapon at the right time, you'll get a boost of damage from that from that bonus window. I know a lot of players were finding that the windows were a little too short. So we've actually added a modifier for those users who are like, okay, I want it to be 50% of an easier window. So you can find certain weapons and certain, I think even keepsakes, that will make those timing windows easier to hit. And on the other side, for the players who are like, no, I'm nailing all of the bonus windows, wait, where are my rewards? What do I get? And we've added the ability to, there's modifiers that will boost the amount of bonus damage that occurs. So if you're really good at hitting those windows, you're going to want to find those, and they will grow how much damage those bonus, those correctly timed bonus windows, how much damage they deal substantially. So I think there's something for everyone there. Oh, and now I've got a giant list of all the like items and abilities and keepsakes we've added to the game. I don't want to list them all because I think a lot of the excitement's going to be built around surprise and delight when you finally get your hands on the early access build. But I'll give you some numbers. So already we've got, just in the last month, we added, and by we I mean Ian. The coding's basically done, and Ian's just running, creating a bunch of animations, creating a bunch of models, and just kicking ass. So he's added 5 abilities just in the last month, 5 ranged weapons in the last month, including some of my favorite new weapons. 2 of them are telekinesis and bottle rockets. So if you like, I love Earthbound. So I love weapons that are a little bit unorthodox, and bottle rockets, I remember that was like a popular weapon that Jeff could use. I don't know if anyone actually knows that game, but really excited for people to get their hands on that one. 2 melee weapons were added, and I'll tell you what those are. Those were the umbrella and a trident, because I think those are just super cool. I think people are going to be excited to see those in the game. And then keepsakes, we've added 13 keepsakes. A lot of them are related to features we've added, like the critical hits, the shock kind of lightning chain damage, and those projectile modifiers. But we're going to get a lot more than that in. That was what we were managing to put in the game while also dealing with the introduction, while also introducing new features like the character stats and the loadout crafting. And so I think by early access launch, which I know it's annoying that we don't have a date yet, I know Patrick has promised that you'll get a date at some point in July, and so we'll let you know. And by that I don't mean the date will be in July, but in July you will know when the date is. So hopefully that tides you over. And of course, our sound designer, Paul, that joined, the second Paul, he's been kicking ass, and he's changed hundreds of sounds already. I was looking through the change list. Everything feels just so much better. He's kind of doing tactical strikes of the most important things, like how the combat feels, how the hits feel. And so just super excited for that to be in that early access build for you all to play with. And that leads to what we're working on this next month. And it's a lot, but I'll go through it. So of course we're going to add more weapons, abilities, more shields, shoes, modifiers, and keepsakes. We have kind of target numbers that we want to hit, and that's kind of the bulk of where the work remains. Ian and Paul right now are working on more enemies, and we might even, I don't want to commit the team to this, but there's a stretch goal for a 4th boss to be added. If it doesn't make it in for early access launch, it will be available in the next content update. And as you know, if you've been following our game, if you've been following us during our Kickstarter and during our alpha, we iterate very quickly for a game development studio. So you can expect to see a lot of cool, awesome content in the months that follow our early access launch. Speaking of stretch goals, another one would be adding another Waking World location. So we've got the park. I think there's a couple of others that we'd like to get to, but not 100% sure we'll get there. Even if we don't, we do know there's going to be another Waking World character to add to the list. Kathy's been doing a great job of finishing up the writing. I think that they're on the last character, and then there's just, I think, a couple more levels for some of the existing characters. But in general, everything's kind of coming together there, which is awesome. And oh yeah, what I'm working on right now is permanent upgradable relationship items, and we don't have like a great name for it yet. So if you've got a good idea, throw it in the Discord chat. But we have this concept of, okay, we've got these characters, and for early access we'll have the 6 in there. And as you level up, you're unlocking these items, but also we wanted there to be an item that was associated directly with these characters that gets powered up. And so these would be your permanent upgrades. And the only caveat being that you can only choose one at a time, and you can swap them out. So The example I'll give you right now is there's kind of a fire synergy type relationship item that you can get from one of the characters, and as you level it up, it increases the amount of fire damage that's dealt, but then it also increases the chance to cause an enemy to be oiled, and then another one that increases the duration of the burn status effect. So it becomes one of those things where, okay, hey, I'm playing through a run, I'm finding fire burst and a bunch of like a burning sword, and I'm like, okay, my build is really leaning towards this fire element. And so then it makes a lot of sense to go, okay, I'm gonna swap out my relationship item to this one that synergizes super well with my current loadout. And so that's the goal, is to create these items that get more powerful, like they get pretty stupidly powerful. Maybe we may even have to nuke them at some point, nerf them at some point, not nuke them. But it allows you to have that choice of going, okay, this is the state of my character, this is the state of my loadout. Is there something I can swap out here that I've been working towards on the permanent kind of long-term metagame that makes this even more badass? So hopefully you like that. That's gonna require a lot of iteration, I believe, but the first version I think is gonna be ready by early access. So that's coming down the pipeline. We're also going to be adding a tutorial for the Waking World. I understand that a lot of players are like, oh, you can craft items. Oh, you can gift items. Like, none of these things are explicitly really shown to the player. I think our actual kind of combat tutorial works really well. And I don't know if we can do it in quite the same way, but we're going to try to bring it up to at least like an 80% level of what we were able to achieve with the video game inside of a video game tutorial. So hopefully that will make it easier for new players who pick up the game and want to know how they can unlock items and improve the relationships and explore the story elements of the game. We're also going to be fleshing out that memory system that we teased last month with much more content. I don't want to go too deep into that because I think it'll be fun to see that in a trailer, upcoming trailer you'll find. We're also committed to adding a difficulty setting to help the game be more accessible to a larger audience. We're still going to be tuning the game for it to be somewhat more hardcore, because I think that's just the DNA we have on our team, is we're going to be able to tune it for Ian, who's very good at action RPGs. But we also want the game to be, hey, if you just want to enjoy the story, if you just want to enjoy the content, you want to see the beautiful environments and listen to Dale's amazing music, why wouldn't we just allow there to be a switch that allows you to make things just a little bit easier? Again, it's completely optional. It doesn't change the experience if you're hardcore and you want to have that core challenging experience. But for those who don't care about that, I think it's going to be a great addition. And even for me, I'm not as good as Ian or Vash or any of the top tier players. I'm like B tier. The other thing that we want to get to, and these are stretch goals, would be secret rooms and more challenge rooms and different event rooms. I think we have quite a bit of variety even now, but I think it would just be more exciting if the early access build felt like there was a substantial increase in that amount of content. Again, if it doesn't get it in for early access launch, that'll be something that gets pushed to our early access roadmap, which we'll be excited to roll out in the next couple of months. And of course, there's boring tech debt stuff that we have to get to, and by we, I mean I have to get to as the engineer. So Steam achievements, cloud saving, a bunch of other things. My computer just fell asleep. Let me just guess what the last thing was. Oh, and bug fixing and polish. Okay, so that's gonna round out the next month leading up to our early access launch. I hope that gets you excited. I think this was a much longer list than we had last time, so thank you for letting me just read from a screen. There's no way I would remember all of that information. Again, if you have any questions or you want to chat with the development team, the best way to reach us is to join our Discord. It'll be in the link below. You can also follow us on Twitter, follow us on Facebook, like this YouTube video even though it's going to be unlisted, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Apologies in advance to Patrick or Ian, whoever has to fix the sound. I know I have the worst setup, but that you got to be scrappy as a 3-person indie studio. We're not some big publisher-backed company. We gotta make do with my iPhone just leaned up against the Switch dock. So thank you to everyone. Hope you enjoy the early access build that's coming in the next few months. So, Cheers.